A big decision ahead this weekend. We're your headquarters for Air Noland's live commitment this Saturday. Where is he leaning? We've got the latest. And from Air to Gatlin Bair, why this prospect will continue to make headlines throughout the cycle. Plus, as Hugh Freeze puts together his first true class, we'll explain how this weekend will go a long way toward getting the Tigers back on top. The college football recruiting show starts right now. Alongside Blair Angulo, I'm Emily Proud. Submit your questions in the chat. Again, the only way you can do that is by subscribing to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Trust me, you're gonna want to do that this week. Also, please like this video so we know that you're watching. Already got a couple likes here. We'll like a little bit more. So you hit that button and we're gonna go hit the headlines. It has been quite the week for the Buckeyes. First, James Peoples, and now five-star wide receiver Mylan Graham announcing his commitment to Ohio State. He's the number 8 receiver in the class, the 26th overall player. Blair, five-star pass catchers really seem to gravitate toward Columbus, but what makes Graham stand out?
Elite athleticism and explosiveness. He does a tremendous job of gaining separation and has that top gear burst that we've come to see from Ohio State receivers in recent years. So get ready for another big home run threat in the horseshoe.
We told you all about this guy on Tuesday's show, so go check out the clip if you haven't seen it yet. But Air Noland will announce his commitment live right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. So mark your calendars for this Saturday at 8:45 Eastern. He is deciding between a final 7, but Blair, where are you leaning just a couple days out?
Emily, this could go a number of different ways. I said I liked Clemson earlier this week, but some of the current buzz now hovers around Ohio State, Texas A&M, and Miami. No crystal ball predictions as of yet. Air Noland is keeping everyone guessing, so the contending teams have a big chance to add a talented signal caller this Saturday night.
And the Buckeyes would hit the trifecta, landing him this week. All right, jumping to the 2025 class, quarterback Austin Simmons committing to Florida earlier this week. Right now, he is our number 6 quarterback in the class and also plans to suit up for the Gators in baseball as well. So what kind of athlete says that he's headed to Gainesville?
One that Gators fans hope can push DJ Lagway when it's time to compete for that QB1 spot in Gainesville. Austin Simmons has easy arm action, one of the best pure throwers of the football in the 2025 class. Smooth left-handed delivery and can get the ball downfield without breaking a sweat. So a big-time passer is headed to Gainesville.
All right, a big-time player is our next headline. That's five-star edge Elijah Rushing, locking in 4 visits this summer. This is per you, Blair. So you got to tell us all about it here. He's got official visits set up to Arizona, Oregon, Notre Dame, and Tennessee. So let's keep that West Coast recruiting talk going. And as it pertains to that number 1 edge in the class, I mentioned the upcoming visits, busy summer, but who are some other schools to maybe keep an eye on for Rushing?
Rushing hasn't scheduled every official visit, but there are other players in this conversation, right? Michigan, Ohio State are 2 big-time programs that he has his sights set on. Miami, which he recently visited and took that photo with Jason Taylor, still remains in the mix. I know he really liked that visit he took to Washington earlier this year and was able to see the Huskies on the field in person last season, so you can't count out Washington and especially what they do in the state of Arizona. But you break down some of the official visits that he has set. It's really interesting that Arizona will be getting one. It's the hometown school. It's nearby there in Tucson, Arizona, and he loves kind of what that staff has been building. And one little interesting wrinkle is that his brother Cruz Rushing is a walk-on with the Arizona Wildcats. He had previously been committed to Oregon when Mario Cristobal was there. He ends up flipping his decision at the last minute and signs with Florida, which is where they are legacies. His father, George, was a tight end for the Gators. And, he ends up transferring, enters the portal and is now at Arizona. So could we potentially see a reunion of sorts from the Rushing brothers there in Tucson, Arizona? That's one of the interesting schools there on that official visit itinerary for the month of June.
A lot of dots to connect, a lot of family ties. Appreciate you doing that, all the hard work for us. On the other side of the ball, though, the quarterback dominoes just continue to fall. So let's start with one of the top guys in your region, that's four-star Isaac Wilson. So what's the latest on his recruitment as more quarterbacks start to come off the board?
Yeah, it starts with the state of Arizona. Isaac Wilson will be in Arizona this coming week, Monday and Tuesday, to visit both Arizona and Arizona State. It'll be a return trip. He's been to both campuses already this year. He will also be at Oklahoma State on Wednesday as he starts to begin to sort through the official visit destinations. BYU and Utah are the two in-state schools. I think a lot of people have assumed that he will be staying close to home, just like his brother Zach Wilson did, just like his two older brothers Micah and Joshua did, both playing linebacker right now at BYU. And, right now it's a question of whether or not he will follow in their footsteps and make his home in Provo for the next 3 or 4 years. But watch out for the Utah Utes. They've been making a strong impression. He was there a couple times already this month. He was there last week and really enjoys what he's been able to build with not only Coach Ludwig and Coach Whittingham, but I think some of the players on staff. He's been able to catch up with Cam Rising, and obviously that's a quarterback that has been doing a lot of really good things for the Utes. Back-to-back Pac-12 championships, back-to-back Rose Bowl appearances. So watch out for the Utes right here. I'm not yet ready to put in a crystal ball prediction for Utah, but it would shake things up, Emily, out west, where it's a player who, obviously everyone assumed maybe is going to BYU. Could he maybe break that spell and go to his father's alma mater? His dad, Mike, played defensive line at Utah, so that would shake things up there in the Beehive State.
Did we just talk about back-to-back prospects who are deciding between following a brother versus following a father? This is a tough decision for these prospects, but I do like all the kind of connections that you can try to make sense of there. As you know all too well, due to your many visits, Hawaii is far, so it's sometimes a little bit more difficult for some of those prospects to get that national exposure. But Anelu Lafayette seems to be having no trouble at all. Looking at his top 7, some really top programs on it. So what is on the horizon for his recruitment?
It's a player we just saw at the Under Armour Next Camp Series stop in Southern California this past weekend. And he's got official visits now, locked in with Wisconsin, Notre Dame. He will also be at Washington at the end of June. It sounds like Arizona State made a really nice impression on him, and he likes what Coach Dillingham is able to sell now as he takes the helm in Tempe. And this is a player who I think wants to take the officials in the month of June, start to narrow his focus a little bit more after those trips, and then know where he's headed. He wants to make a quick decision, possibly in the month of July, ahead of his senior season, just so he can get that out of the way and not focus on recruiting and focus on getting St. Louis, which is a perennial power. It's developed the likes of Tua Tagovailoa and Nick Herbig and a guy by the name of Marcus Mariota in recent years. They have not won the state championship, which is really rare for them the last couple years, as Kahuku has taken the crown there in the Aloha State. So that's Anelu Lafayette's main objective, is to make a decision and then go and chase that championship ring. So he's got some really important official visits to come this summer.
Sounds like he's got a lot on his plate. Let's head back to the mainland. The top player in Utah is 4-star offensive tackle Isaiah Garcia. He recently took a trip to Washington and has a few more visits out west coming up. The Utes, of course, also involved. So what's next for him, and is there maybe an early favorite for the tackle?
I have my crystal ball prediction on Utah to land the #1 player in the state for this 2024 class. And what a haul that would be, Emily, after landing Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu to anchor the offensive tackles positions in the 2023 class. To bounce right back and get an Isaiah Garcia would be huge for Coach Jim Harding and that whole staff up front for the Utes. He's at UCLA today to take a big unofficial visit. It sounds like UCLA will also get an official visit at some point in the coming months before he makes a decision. He was just at Washington over the weekend, really liked it there. I think Coach Scott Huff has done a really good job of connecting with him. And when you think about players in the state of Utah, they have liked going up north and maybe seeing a little bit of greenery there in the city of Seattle. Don't count out the Huskies. He's supposed to be at USC this coming weekend, and that would be a huge target for the Trojans. I think, talk at length until our faces are purple about the Trojans' need to get bigger and more physical up front ahead of their move to the Big Ten, and they have their shot with Isaiah Garcia this coming weekend on an unofficial visit.
He would certainly help that. Let's fast forward to the class of 2025. Another offensive lineman, Eli Kaloniavalu, out of Bishop Gorman, received an invite to the Polynesian Bowl. Got a few more visits on the horizon, so what is the latest early on in this recruitment?
He's supposed to be at Utah this coming weekend to check out spring practice. The Utes have, I think, the leg up early on in that recruitment. He originally is from the state of Utah. He played his first 2 years at Timpview in the city of Provo, has transferred to Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas this offseason, and this is a player with a ton of experience, has been starting as a freshman, or since he was a freshman, at left tackle, and he comes from the same school that just produced Spencer Fano, who was playing on the other side at right tackle. So this is a really marquee elite offensive lineman that will now make the move over to center. At Bishop Gorman, they're loaded up front, and he's going to be anchoring that offensive line from the center position. He's also scheduled to get out to Georgia in a couple weeks to take a visit. The Bulldogs have already offered. They don't come out west very often to offer prospects, especially up front on the offensive line. So Eli is definitely going to keep that in mind and keep that offer high up on his list. But I think right now Utah has set the tone. They get him this weekend in Salt Lake City, and they were the first offer. This is a player who now is approaching two dozen offers on his list, and it resonates when a recruit gets that first offer. And I think Utah has obviously made a huge impression on him early on in the process.
Oh yeah, that early impression definitely means the most. All the other offers after that have to top those first guys. Hey, go to 247sports.com. It is the place to be to read more about all of these prospects, really every single prospect that there is. Blair's not just a great host, not just a great analyst, also a great writer, Blair. So you can go read his work online at 247sports.com. I just made him very embarrassed here. I don't care. Our War Daddy series continues, and a quick refresher. This is a top prospect who will be making headlines throughout the cycle. We're just here to kind of give you a heads up about it. And this week's pick is the number 9 wide receiver in a loaded group of pass catchers. That is Gatlin Bair. That is Brandon Huffman. He is here with us now. Huff, before we talk about Gatlin Bair's recruitment, I mean, what makes him such a weapon on offense?
We got to backtrack a couple of years. When he was a freshman, his two coaches on the 7-on-7 circuit, Jess Jackson and Shane Williams-Rhodes, said, keep an eye on this guy. He's a speedy trackster, but he's going to have a lot of offers. And it was a year ago last week where he got his first offer from the University of Utah. Now he's over 30 offers. He's the number 1 player in the Pacific Northwest, a top 10 player, and he is fast. He beat Roderick Pleasant earlier this year, the defending 100-meter and 200-meter champion in California, in the 60. And then this last weekend, he went down to Austin, and at the Texas Relays, he went a 10.18 100-meter time. He can flat out fly. When he's got the ball in his hands, once he's in the open field, you're not catching him. And he's developed as a pristine route runner, a great pass catcher, but you can't teach that speed. And he's got elite speed, and that's why so many schools in the country are going to this small town in Idaho. His coach, Cameron Anderson, Coach Colston Levin, who was a big part of Michigan's team that made it to the college football semifinals this year where they played against TCU. He had a touchdown against Ohio State. He's got an even better prospect now in Gatlin Bair, who's the highest rated player from the state of Idaho, at least in the 20-plus years I've been doing recruiting coverage.
Now on to his recruitment. It's really rare, Huff, to see a player from the state of Idaho stack up offer after offer, and he's close to 30 now. He's got a who's who of the college football names: Oregon, Nebraska, Michigan. You mentioned Colorado earlier as well. What's the process like for him heading into the spring evaluation period, and at what stage could we be on right now in his recruiting process?
I wouldn't be surprised if we start getting that list trimmed down a little bit, maybe to a top 7, a top 5. But, you look at his 2 most recent offers, they were 2 teams that were playing in a game you were at, Blair, in January in Los Angeles. University of Georgia, and TCU. Now, you've got Nebraska, who's a factor in there. You've got Texas, which had him on campus this last weekend when he was in Austin. You have Michigan, which, like I said, they signed Colston Loveland out of Idaho, plays for the same high school coach. You've also got BYU and Utah. He's LDS, so BYU looms large. Utah, being one of the first schools to offer him, they're a factor. Oregon, Junior Adams, who had been recruiting in the state of Idaho when he was at Boise State, has a great track team. They're a part of it. But don't sleep on Boise State. Boise State is willing to go toe-to-toe with those guys. Andy Avalos, the head coach there, has run just a fantastic recruitment with Bair, and the Broncos are very much a factor there. But then you've got Georgia and TCU. The late offers there has them in the mix too. So I think you're going to start to see that list whittle down to maybe he's at a top 11. There's going to be some schools that are in that current top 11 he named in December that won't be in the top 7. There's some schools that weren't in that top 11 that will be in the top 7. I think you're going to see a top 5 to top 7 coming out in the coming weeks, those official visits to be set, and then a decision will come probably shortly thereafter, after the visits are taken this spring. And then I think by the time he plays his senior season, he'll be committed somewhere, and then he'll play in the All-American Bowl and then leave for his LDS mission for 2 years.
Oof. Did you see him on the track? That is a fast player.
It went too fast. I didn't get to see it that
I know. Did you blink? You probably missed it. Another West Coast prospect from the class of 2024, garnering really his own fair share of attention, is top 247 offensive tackle Menase Itete. Huff, for those who are hearing his name maybe for the first time, don't feel bad. He's only been playing football for 2 years. That's also how long he's been in the country. Despite all that, though, why are you so intrigued by him?
Well, what makes him so intriguing is that unlike a lot of players who've been playing since they were in 3rd or 4th grade, he doesn't have a lot of bad habits because he's not a football player by trade. He grew up playing soccer in Congo, came to the U.S. in 2020 to play basketball. Then the pandemic hit. He went back home to Congo, came back to the United States to play basketball at Modesto Christian High School, and then decided to try football. He played, I think, 2 games as a sophomore, saw him at a bunch of camps last spring and summer, and you couldn't teach the tools that he had. The 80-plus inch wingspan, the length, the flexibility, the athleticism. Like I said, the lack of bad habits. And after a full season during his junior year, he has seen his recruitment explode. I had a chance to talk to him this past weekend at the Under Armour Next Series in Southern California, where he kind of had his breakout party a year ago at the Northern California camp. And you've seen a kid go from playing soccer to now having a chance to change his entire family's life with a football career that could see him be an NFL draft pick in a couple of years, with a recruitment that's going to be fascinating to watch because he's not originally from the West Coast. He's not even originally from the U.S., so there's no ties to California. He's got true national recruiting interest and a true interest in going national, and he's got a great story.
I mean, going from basketball to football wasn't easy. So before I started playing football, I was hurt, so it was a hard time for me, and it took me a long time to be on my feet. And then my coach just told me to try. On the first place, I didn't want to, but I realized like I didn't have another option to do, so I just get on in and do whatever it was told me to do, and then that works out for me. I feel like soccer really helped me with my footwork, the speed, the jump, height, like everything. So basketball just helped me to be consistent. I never thought about it because I was like more NBA, but when I realized like everything can happen, so football helped me to have like whatever was needed. So I just like happy to be on this position right now. My whole career so far, I played like 13 games. My first 2 was bad because I didn't know nothing about what I was doing. So, and then my last 11 games was pretty good. I was getting better every single game, and then I just like this challenge on the game, you know, like hitting people, warnings, like play defense, offense. Like I feel good. Utah, USC, Miami, Florida State, and those the school right there. It's like something like all the recruits trying to do, going to school, visit, have a great time with the coaches, like the players. So I'm just happy to do all those things because it never happened to me on the basketball side. So it's a great time to have.
Love the honesty, love the attitude. I can't imagine, learning the sport of football, but also navigating the recruitment and everything that comes with that. But he mentioned some of the things that he's been working on. But in your evaluation, being as new as he is to the game, Huff, what are some of the things that he needs to work on to take his game to that next level?
Yeah, I mean, it's just continually to get better at the game, to continue to understand the game. You know, he says there's even times when he's at a camp or when he's in a game that there's still certain things his coaches will say that he doesn't fully understand because he's so new to the game. And that's what I think makes him so appealing to college coaches, is that he's essentially a blank canvas that doesn't have the bad habits, that doesn't have a lot of knowledge, but as he continues to learn the game, as he continues to develop physically, the sky is the limit. Again, you can't teach that length, you can't teach that flexibility, the footwork, all those things that he has. All he needs is more experience, more snaps. He made the move from tiny Modesto Christian to Modesto Central Catholic, which has consistently sent out a ton of players to college football. He's upgrading the talent he's going to be playing against, which I think is only going to help him get better. And this is a kid by 2025, 2026, I think a lot of NFL draft pundits are going to talk about as a guy that could be a high round draft pick as he continues to get more experience under his belt.
Huff, in that piece, he named a number of schools that are under consideration or maybe standing out to him in the process. Who do you think is potentially in a great spot heading into the spring to land Menase Itete?
Well, Utah gets the first official visit, the only ones that he's locked in so far in June. And, you know, Blair, how many times have you and I talked about Utah finding a guy that is still developable, and then he goes and turns out to be a first-round draft pick? So keep an eye on the Utes there, but USC had him on campus for an unofficial visit on Saturday. He said that they are certain to get an official visit. Doesn't have that date locked in. Obviously, the Trojans would love to get him, but the two schools that I think right now may have the best chance at him are Miami and Florida State. And there's connections to both of those schools that give those schools an advantage. Florida State signed his good friend Blake Nicholson. They train at the same facility at Elevate 209 in Stockton. And Blake Nicholson signed with the Seminoles. Derek Ray, who's originally from Central California, the general manager at Florida State, has been doing a great job working on Menase. But also keep an eye on Miami. Remember, they signed a year ago Collins Achiampong, who had a similar story. Came from Africa to the U.S. to play basketball, was originally committed to Michigan, ultimately signed with Miami. And when Menase was down on his unofficial visit there a couple weeks ago, he spent the majority of that trip with Collins. And so I think that the Collins effect, plus you've got a head coach who's an offensive lineman, his best friend is the offensive line coach, Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal. Both of those guys have done a great job in finding offensive linemen and developing them and turning them into NFL guys. So the Noles and the Canes right now could have an old-fashioned recruiting battle for a kid from California.
I love it. Love to see it. Huff, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we did a lot of West Coast. Now it's time to head over to the East Coast and a first true class, really, under new head coach Hugh Freeze. Coming together quite nicely. So far, 4 commitments in the fold. 2 top 247 players, headlined by, of course, the quarterback at the top of the list there, Walker White. The Tigers currently hold the 22nd ranked class, but to put that into SEC perspective, that is good for 8th in the conference because it just means more. Well, speaking of more, we need some more voices in this show. So let's welcome in Christian Clemente of Auburn Undercover. Christian, A-Day is coming up on Saturday, meaning top talent will be on campus, taking in all the sights and sounds. So first, what has been your early impressions of Freeze as a recruiter so far at Auburn?
Yeah, it's been an extremely aggressive recruiting style from this staff. It's been, the running joke that I've kind of had is, last spring, my golf game got pretty good. I had a lot of spare time, but this spring it's been extremely busy. Through 13 spring practices, there's really only been one day where there's not kids on campus worth interviewing, worth talking to. They've had a 5-star on campus just about every single day. It's been, Hugh Freeze has vocally said it. He said the 24 class and the 25 class it's his future at Auburn. If they fail in those classes, he'll fail at Auburn. And he said that multiple times. And so they've been extremely aggressive. We've talked with recruits. One recruit said, that Hugh Freeze is the coach that recruits him the most. And he told him, hey, keep a notepad right by your bedside. Every time I call you, anytime a head coach calls you, put a tally mark. And I guarantee you by signing day, I'll have the most tally marks come signing day. So they've been just grinding it out, and now that kind of comes to fruition with a bunch of kids coming on campus for A-Day.
Christian, you mentioned this different spring recruiting approach, right? It's a bit more aggressive. There's more offers. There's more visitors on campus than maybe what we saw under Brian Harsin. Is this a way that Hugh Freeze is just going to recruit at Auburn, or is it more about him striking while the iron is hot, considering that he's a new hire?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. Auburn has a good opportunity. They tried to capture some of that momentum that Cadillac Williams built during that interim period. Finished pretty strong, not kind of where Auburn wants to be every year for the 23 class there at signing day. So looking to carry that momentum a little bit, and then obviously, like I said earlier, I mean they know they have to strike with these first two recruiting classes. Hugh Freeze knows Auburn is not where it needs to be. It's not where it has, over the past couple of years. It's just it. I mean, they had 5 wins last year. That's not what Auburn wants to be. Emily, you said it intro, and Auburn's 8th in the SEC. That's, it's a good start for this 24 class, but Auburn and Hugh Freeze, they want to be, they want to be 1, they want to be 2, or they want to be 3. They don't want to be really anywhere below the 4 spot in the SEC. So they're trying to make up some ground on this 24 class right now.
One of the biggest attendees this weekend will, of course, be the 4-star quarterback commit, Walker White. He's been locked in since February. It doesn't sound like Hugh Freeze really needs any help recruiting, but how has he kind of been a factor on the trail helping build this class?
Yeah, Walker and all of Auburn's commits have been very mature since committing to Auburn, and they've been extremely vocal as recruiters. When they come back for visits, it's not about them visiting. It's not about them getting attention from the coaching staff. It's about them going to work. And Walker said that after his last visit. Earlier in March, KJ Bolden was there that day, Daniel Calhoun, the top 247 offensive tackle. There were a bunch of guys there. And Walker was like, look, I don't want any attention from this coaching staff. I'll watch practice a little bit, but I just want to go to work and start recruiting these other guys. And he's been that way on Twitter. He's been that way texting these guys. Casey Poe, the offensive lineman from Texas, he tweeted out video of his film a couple of weeks ago saying, hey, come block for me. He tweeted at him again earlier this week. He said, I'll buy a bundle of roses for your commitment ceremony if you commit to Auburn. It'll be the most dramatic commitment ceremony ever. So this group has been extremely vocal. It's good for Auburn to get all of those guys on campus this Saturday, and they'll just all be working. They're not really there to watch the game. They're there to recruit.
Walker White handing out roses, that'd be an interesting sight as well. Perry Thompson is one of the players that will be at Auburn this weekend. He's the 5-star wide receiver that's already committed to Alabama. I know our editors like to pull clips and VODs from some of these shows. So, Christian, this is your chance. What are the Tigers' chances of flipping him from the Tide?
Oh, man. Putting me on the spot a little bit. You're always skeptical when it comes to Auburn flipping an Alabama commit. You kind of just have to believe it when you see it. But this Auburn staff, led by Hugh Freeze and Marcus Davis, have put in a ton of work on Perry Thompson. He wasn't even offered by the previous staff, and I think he's the number 2 player in the class, and he's a 5-star wide receiver. He was one of this staff's first offers, and they've been putting in work on him. In January, he visits a few days after he's offered. He's already visited twice in March, and now he's expected back for an overnight visit for A-Day as well. He's expected to spend some time with the team after the game as well. So the staff has made him a huge priority. I don't want to say Auburn's going to flip him because it's hard to ever call Auburn to flip an Alabama commit. It just doesn't happen, especially not a 5-star. But the staff has made him a huge priority. He knows that. And if you're looking at an Alabama commit, he would probably be the one that you would circle and say, this is the guy that Auburn has the best chance to flip right now.
Ooh, spicy. Got the rivalry on the field, the rivalry in the trail. We love to see it. We love to see also, too, a pair of top 15 players scheduled to attend this weekend, both on the defensive side of the ball. First, you got 5-star KJ Bolden, the number 1 safety in the class. So how has Auburn been able to become a contender in his recruitment?
Yeah, exactly, Emily. They've been kind of weaseling their way in a little bit. Zach Etheridge he's been pretty consistently, even over the past couple of years, Auburn's best recruiter. And now with Hugh Freeze helping him out, it's given Auburn a chance. Even dating back to last year, there were kind of rumblings about KJ Bolden asking about Auburn, having some interest in Auburn, but Auburn just not really recruiting him besides Zach Etheridge, a phone call kind of here and there. But now he visits earlier in March. That was an overnight visit. He's supposed to be back for A-Day, and it'll be another overnight visit. After his first visit in March, he said, look, Auburn has a chance. They definitely have a chance now. And he's expected to release his official visits here at the end of April. And it seems like Auburn has positioned itself to land an official visit. And, from there, you're in pretty much his unofficial top 5, and you're in the ball game. So getting him back for A-Day is definitely huge.
Right behind KJ Bolden in the rankings is Jordan Ross. He's the number one edge and number one player in the state of Alabama for this 2024 class. What's the vibe right now, Christian, on Jordan Ross and Auburn's chances with that dynamic playmaker?
Yeah, I think Auburn likes where it stands right now with Jordan Ross, and I think Jordan Ross likes Auburn quite a bit. He told us, we went to go and see him play basketball earlier this year, freak athlete, and he told us, look, I grew up an Auburn fan. I love Auburn. That's not going to impact my recruitment necessarily, but he definitely has a soft spot in his heart for Auburn, and he visited earlier this spring, and now he'll be back as a freshly minted 5-star, and Auburn feels pretty good. Obviously, it'll be a battle. Alabama's in there, Georgia's in there, Tennessee is in there as well. But Auburn feels pretty good about where it stands right now. That edge position is a premium position, especially for Auburn in this class. It really needs some help at that spot, and Jordan Ross is at the top of the board.
Christian, I'm sorry your golf game is suffering, but does sound like a lot of excitement happening at Auburn right now. Thank you for breaking it all down for us. And if you want to see more of his work, you go to Auburn Undercover, and that is where you will find all things on Tigers football and, of course, recruiting. You'll find more anecdotes about, roses and the parallels to the Bachelor show. It sounds a little bit like that with the recruitment, but Hugh Freeze, he is rocking and rolling on the trail, and we are rocking and rolling on the show. It is time to answer some of your viewer questions. And Blair, the first one I found here is pretty simple here from DBOG, just saying, Mylan Graham comparison? Question mark.
Let's stick with the Ohio State theme and say Chris Olave. This is a player who we got to see a number of times out here in Southern California before he went on and played with the Buckeyes. And when you think about comparing both of them, you think about the separation. You think about their route running, their footwork. They're so technically sound, but they've got athleticism, burst, explosiveness, everything that you need out of a wide receiver to get open in space and then get over the top of the defense. I love what Graham does from a body control standpoint, and that was Chris Olave's game in Columbus. He was going up for the football in the back of the end zone, was doing stuff off over to the sideline and coming down with first down reception. So that's a player that really comes to mind. And when you think about his potential maybe in that offense, I think of what Chris Olave was able to do.
Yeah. Also, first round. That was correct as well. G-Man asking, what is the latest with Nebraska? And has Nebraska moved up on Brandon Baker's list?
Well, it's tough to say right now. I think you still have to like maybe some of the more established national powers right now for Brandon Baker, but how big would it be for that staff, for the coaches to be able to go into the state of California and land the nation's #1 offensive tackle? It sounds like he has now scheduled some visits. It does look like Lincoln will be a destination for him, and he'll get out there to check out what the Cornhuskers have to offer. I think this is a player who would be, interestingly enough, super important, and maybe more so than getting a Dylan Raiola, right? You need the big boys up front to set the tone. And, when you think about Nebraska wanting to get back to a physical brand of football, you think of players like Brandon Baker. So, we'll see. Never say never. It sounds like maybe the odds are against Nebraska right now for Brandon Baker, but, I wouldn't count them out, especially if he's planning to get out to Lincoln.
Especially since it's April. 8 months to go until the early signing period, so we have a little bit of time there. This next question comes from Jason asking, any smoke to the Twitter rumors of Austin Simmons reclassifying? The recent Gators commit is in the 2025 class.
We heard some noise earlier this morning, right? And this would be a really interesting decision if that were to happen. Obviously we have to kind of look at how that affects the recruiting room and the quarterback room for Florida, which was in a bit of a flux here in the 2023 cycle, losing Jaden Rashada the way they lost him, kind of picking up the pieces in the meantime and getting a DJ Lagway in the 2024 class. And I think, Florida right now, they need all the talent that they can get in that quarterback room. So, the quicker that Austin Simmons is possibly able to get out to Gainesville, the better it is for not only him, but obviously for the program, for Billy Napier and what he's building there, and to, potentially continue to attract talent to Gainesville.
Which class could he potentially be reclassifying to? Is it just taking it one step down? Or anything's on the table?
We don't know we don't know the truth. It could be a class, maybe 2 classes. That's some of the rumors that are coming out there. We heard that. We were in a meeting this morning, Emily. We heard that as a possibility. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what shakes out. But it sounds like it could be in the works.
Okay. So no fire yet, but we'll dip our toe in the smoke as well, as they say. This next one coming from Tyler Chambers saying, any rumors to Jeremiah Smith flipping from Ohio State?
Well, he's not going to flip to Michigan. We already know that based on what Jaden Davis was able to say earlier in the week, right? The new 5-star quarterback that committed to the Wolverines. There was a social media post where, the caption said that Jaden Davis is going to start.
Yes, here it is.
Yeah, he's going to start recruiting for the Wolverines to try to flip some Ohio State commitments. And guess who goes in to the comment section? That would be Jeremiah Smith. He said something to the effect of, hell no. So it's pretty interesting. It's obviously really fun. This is what college football is, right? It's the rivalries, it's the pageantry. It trickles into recruiting. When Jaden Davis throws shots at Ohio State and he's not even suiting up on Saturdays and he's saying he's going to come after some of the players that are committed there, and then you see Jeremiah Smith respond the way it does. Not only does it solidify his recruitment and his commitment, I guess, to Ohio State, but think about kind of how that riles up the fan base and how that allows you to become, in a way, kind of a player that has already earned his stripes before he even steps foot on campus. So Jeremiah Smith, tip of the cap there. I think he knows what he's doing.
Feels like both of those guys have fallen on their sides of the rivalry. And I love that response, though. To be clear, we did not say that he was potentially going to flip. It was some guy named Austin shooting his shot there, trying to see if he can get Jeremiah Smith as well. Isn't just landing Jaden Davis already awesome enough? You got to just keep going, right? Never ends. Speaking of never ends, the show will, but don't worry, the content will not. We have more excitement on Saturday night. Mark your calendars. Air Noland, top 10 quarterback in the 2024 class, is set to make his decision. You see the list of finalists. I'm not going to name them all. Big-time programs, big-time player. Tune in Saturday at 8:45. For Blair Angulo, I'm Emily Proud, and this is the College Football Recruiting Show.